second era was in a 6-foot lane. Then when we went to the next era, it was in the 12-foot lane because Wilt changed it from a 6-foot lane to. That's why all of those rebounds by all of the guys in the 40s and 50s were so high, because shooting percentages are so low, and then the fact that there were so many rebounds and they were close to the basket. Then all of a sudden, boom, we got to make it out here now because of Kareem and what these guys are doing. We want to make the game easier, so we open it up to 16 feet. Well, with those guys, not only now did they have to extend their game in the post-ups and what you were running for them, but in order for them to get the rebounds, and they had to now, really work, and it's difficult at 16 feet, okay? I don't mean to, sound too much X's and O's, but I have a great respect for all of those teams during those eras, just like all of those players, you see? And I said this the other day when I talked to the NBA people, and I said, look, LeBron James is the best player today. Stop getting in arguments that he's better than Michael Jordan, Michael Jordan's better than LeBron James, so forth and that. And then the old guys will tell you Oscar Robertson better than both of them. It depends upon who you talk to. And then right away, these people, they look at me and I said, wait a second, will you check Oscar's first 5 years in the league? I said, all he averaged added up. Yeah, they gave him a triple-double for 1 year because they would not round off the 9.6, 7, and 8. Just look it up into another 10. Oscar Robertson, when you add it all up, for 5 years, averaged 30, 10, and 10 overall. So who's to say Oscar Robertson couldn't get 30 today? And I'll tell you why, and this is what I said to them. I put that hand on your hip, Jack, and you're a guard, and you're a small forward, and I put my hand and call that hand checking with these guys with hands this big, and they move you, and they press you full court, and they put that hand, and then as you start to go by them, start to go by me. Come on. We were able to use that forearm as soon as it's like football. All of a sudden now the defensive halfback can't get you past 5 yards. Why? Because they want more scoring. So today we've got a green light for these guards and small forwards to get to the rim now, and you have to play them perfectly without the hand contact or the forearm. When you talk Oscar Robertson and you talk Michael Jordan, you know what I said to guys, when you don't believe what it was like in the 70s, 80s, will you please watch the documentary on the Detroit bad guys? And nobody got thrown out of those games. And you saw guys flying into the stand. Mike, you were there, come on. I mean, it was a joke. I mean, today you would, on one hit, you'd be suspended for a month here, okay? And that's why it's hysterical when these guys are bitching about going to the rim. They don't know what it was like to go to the rim in the 70s and 80s because you might not get up again. And then you had to take all of those hits like Jordan and the Gervins and all of the guys that were the big, and Magic and Bird and all these guys. Come on, it was if you were in the 70s and 80s as a coach or a player, the beauty of the game, the IQ of the game, the continuities and the sets that teams ran were just absolutely gorgeous to watch. And then the physical defensive part, you better be running good stuff, Jack, or you're not getting a good shot.
In basketball, some voices cut through the noise, not because they're the loudest in the room, but because they've actually earned the right to speak. Hubie Brown is exactly that kind of voice, a Hall of Fame coach, a highly respected broadcaster, and a lifelong student of the game. Brown has watched every major chapter of NBA history play out in real time. At 90 years old, he has no interest in playing favorites or guarding anyone's reputation. He speaks from lived experience, shaped by decades of wins, losses, and moments that defined eras. That's precisely what gives his words such weight. When Hubie Brown offers an opinion, it doesn't feel like a talking point. It feels like a verdict, direct, grounded, and delivered without hesitation. His position on basketball greatness is straightforward. He believes LeBron James is the greatest player of the modern era, and Michael Jordan was the greatest player of his time. In Hubie's view, that framing should settle the argument. No dramatic headlines, no endless stat comparisons, just an honest acknowledgement that two legends dominated under vastly different circumstances. For Brown, greatness can't be measured by numbers alone. It has to be judged against the conditions a player faced during his era. and having lived through both generations, Brown understands those differences better than almost anyone still talking about the game today. He watched Jordan compete in a league where physicality wasn't just allowed, it was expected. Attacking the basket meant walking into a war zone. Hand-checking was legal. Elbows and forearms were standard tools of defense. Physical toughness wasn't a competitive edge, it was a basic requirement for survival on the court. Today, many of those same actions result in immediate fouls and free throws. The game has been restructured to protect offensive players and encourage scoring. That's why Brown tends to smile when he hears modern players describe physical play. His response never really changes. If getting to the rim feels tough now, he says, imagine trying it in the brutal, unrelenting NBA of the 1980s, where one hard collision could put you flat on the hardwood and nobody was stopping the game to apologize. That's the reality Brown returns to whenever generations are compared. In Hubie's view, LeBron James is unquestionably the king of the modern game. His dominance, his longevity, and his all-around brilliance are simply beyond debate. But Brown also recognizes that LeBron has thrived in a league deliberately shaped to reward scoring, fast-paced play, floor spacing, and highlight reel moments. Jordan, by contrast, reached the summit during what many consider the most physically punishing era in NBA history, where every point came with a physical price and every drive to the basket felt like a confrontation. And Jordan didn't just endure those conditions, he conquered them. Brown frequently points fans back to the footage and stories surrounding the Detroit Pistons, the team that made it their mission to stop Jordan by any means necessary. Time after time, Jordan absorbed the punishment, climbed back to his feet, and responded with another brilliant performance. For Brown, that relentless refusal to be broken is what separates a superstar from a true icon. In his view, Jordan became more than a player. He became the standard, the measuring stick against which all greatness is evaluated. LeBron may be the defining force of his generation, but Brown argues that Jordan didn't just dominate the competition, he reshaped the sport itself, changing how basketball was played, how it was watched, and how it was understood around the world. That's why for Brown, the greatest of all time conversation always leads back to the same name, not out of nostalgia or personal sentiment, but because of what Jordan's presence forced the game to become. Brown also pushes back on one of sport's most popular hypotheticals: which superstar would thrive in a different era? While fans love imagining LeBron in the 1990s or Jordan in today's league, Brown believes the more meaningful question is simpler: who forced the league itself to change because of their greatness? LeBron's career has been defined by remarkable adaptation. He evolved from an explosive young phenom into a playmaking maestro, then into a dominant post presence, and eventually into a veteran scorer operating on intelligence and precision. His ability to reinvent himself at every stage has been extraordinary. Jordan's influence, however, worked differently. According to Brown, Jordan wasn't adjusting to fit the system, he was the force that disrupted it. His dominance pushed the league to rethink defensive schemes, reconsider rule books, and search for answers to a player who seemed genuinely impossible to contain. Teams built entire game plans around slowing him down, and the NBA evolved in direct response to the problems he created. For Hubie Brown, that kind of influence is what elevates Jordan from a basketball legend to a figure whose impact is still felt in the sport decades after he last played. The physical targeting Jordan faced throughout his career ultimately helped accelerate changes to the game itself. Tougher penalties for excessive contact, greater emphasis on player protection, and a gradual shift toward the wide-open, offense-friendly NBA we see today. Every phase of his career seemed to leave a permanent mark. LeBron James has mastered this modern game and excelled at every challenge it presents. But those who argue for Jordan's legacy contend that many of the structures LeBron has thrived within were built on foundations Jordan helped lay.
In that view, there's a meaningful distinction between being great and being transformational.
Great players dominate their generation. Transformational figures change the direction of the sport itself. That's why many believe the question of whether Jordan could succeed in today's NBA misses the larger point entirely. He dominated under some of the harshest conditions the league has ever produced: fewer protections, more physical punishment, and defenses designed specifically to wear him down. The argument follows naturally. If he could conquer that era, a more open and offense-friendly league would have presented him with even greater opportunities. Away from the court, Jordan's impact reached a completely different level. LeBron has constructed a remarkable business empire. Media ventures, investments, production companies, and global partnerships that have made him one of the most successful athlete entrepreneurs in history. But Jordan is widely regarded as the original blueprint for that entire path. When Nike partnered with him in the early 1980s, few people could have imagined what would follow. The Air Jordan brand grew far beyond a signature sneaker. It became a global cultural phenomenon that permanently changed the landscape of sports marketing. Decades after his retirement, the brand continues to generate billions in revenue and remains one of the most recognized names anywhere on the planet. To many, Jordan didn't follow an existing business model. He created one. His influence stretched beyond endorsements and revenue figures because he represented something larger than athletics. Long before social media existed, his presence alone commanded worldwide attention. When Jordan walked into an arena, people felt they were watching something that didn't come around very often. Young fans from cities across Europe, Asia, and South America studied his moves, copied his style, and measured their own dreams against his example. What Jordan ultimately sold wasn't a shoe or a brand. It was the belief that greatness was achievable. And in doing so, he helped turn basketball into a global cultural force unlike anything the sport had ever seen. His influence stretched beyond championships, scoring records, and unforgettable plays. He transformed winning into a worldwide pursuit and made excellence something millions of people actively wanted to chase. LeBron has brilliantly used the tools of the modern era, social media reach, entertainment platforms, and global partnerships to build something extraordinary. But many believe Jordan built the road that made all of that possible. The Jumpman logo didn't just become a symbol for a shoe company. It became part of popular culture itself, recognized far beyond the boundaries of basketball. That's why, in the eyes of so many fans and analysts, the conversation about who truly built basketball's business legacy keeps pointing back to Jordan. LeBron represents the modern athlete entrepreneur at his best. Jordan is seen as the pioneer who first proved it was even possible. One expanded what an athlete could become. The other established that there were no limits in the first place. And for many, that distinction carries all the weight in the world. Because the conversation about greatness has never been limited to trophies and statistics. It includes cultural footprint, lasting influence, and the power to change how the world perceives a sport. Those who stand in Jordan's corner argue that he didn't just play basketball at the highest level, he turned it into a global obsession and left behind a legacy that continues shaping the game long after his final shot.